are these kinds of occurrences going to happen over and over again? So Rodney King was beaten in 1991, and what happens if that happens over and over again? What if there's something going on at the law enforcement agency? And so this statute is meant to get at those kinds of systemic problems. And so when we're looking at a police department, we will look at the individual incidents to see whether there's violations occurring in individual incidents. But we're going to look at a lot of incidents because we want to see what's the common thread across those violations. And more importantly, what are the root causes of those violations? Because the statute also commands us that if we find a pattern or practice of violations, we need to go to court to try to get those patterns or practices to be eliminated. So we're trying to prevent constitutional violations from occurring in the future. And what that means is that we need to find those root causes and we need to address them to make sure that violations don't recur.
Thank you. We're also getting questions about the roles, since there's the USA involvement and the Office of Civil Rights Special Litigation Section involvement in DC. So the question is, what is the role of the United States Attorney's Office in this investigation? And I'll just say that we are two sections. We are two divisions of the department. One is in DC and one is here in Louisville. My DC colleagues, they do these cases across the country. And when they do that, they partner with the local United States Attorney's Office. And that's my role. I hope that helps clarify things. There's also a question, Paul, about DOJ as a law enforcement agency. It seems like we're investigating another law enforcement agency. And the question is, should we trust you?
I think I completely understand that people have every reason to be skeptical. Folks here have gone through a lot. And I understand if folks think that, this just looks like one more well-intentioned effort. I completely get that. What I would say is that we are going to work very hard to establish our credibility and to earn some trust. But that is really up to members of the public about whether they find us credible and whether they extend that trust. I'd ask you to judge us by our actions. We're going to be reaching out to folks. We're doing this tonight. We're going to continue reaching out, having meetings, having community meetings, taking input from people. And if we find that there are violations, we'll be issuing a report of our findings that the public will be able to read and judge for themselves about whether they find it credible and whether they think it's a high quality report. We also have a track record that folks can consider. If you go to the website of the Civil Rights Division, you can see the reports that we have put out for previous investigations. And you can take a look and see how we describe the violations of the law, how we explain the evidence that we found, and how we get to the sorts of changes that need to be made to prevent those violations in the future. I think also we just want to make sure that there are open channels of communication throughout our investigation. It's important for us to hear from you. If you think we're not looking at something the right way or avoiding some topic or not handling something well, we want to know. It's important for us to have that information. And so we're trying to provide as many avenues as possible for you to reach us.
Thank you. Maveen, it looks like people want to know if the Department of Justice is investigating the police union. Could you take this question?
Yeah, thank you. So our authority only extends to investigating law enforcement agencies. It doesn't cover other entities such as the union. But in the event that we find constitutional violations, our goal is to create and craft remedies that will make a difference. And part of that will include negotiating and working with the police union and police officers. And from our experience in other jurisdictions, we've seen instances where we've been aligned with the police union. And that can actually be a very effective tool and an effective means for ensuring the durability of the reforms that we agree to with the city and the police department. One example that comes to mind is that police unions typically recognize that the root causes of the deficiencies that we find can be due to inadequate supervision, support, or training, and that some of the problematic patterns that we find may be due to the systems that are impacting police officers. So while finding common ground with a police union might seem unlikely, it does happen, and it can be very effective to build momentum for other changes as well. That being said, I want to note that if we do find that the police union is hindering the implementation of the measures that we believe are necessary to fix the problems that we're finding, we will use the various legal options available to us to overcome that barrier.
Thank you. I do want to say it sounds like, as I said in the beginning, we were almost at capacity, almost my understanding of it, 500 registered participants. And so if you can, in asking a question, use the Q&A function of the Zoom. That will help us be able to respond in a more efficient manner. 500 people on the chat function can be cumbersome. But that said, here's a question, I think, Charles, for you. The author of this one saying, I'm exhausted. What can I say that hasn't already been said, that wasn't already live streamed, or isn't already known?
I was about to speak on mute. You know, we understand that. We know that there are some folks in the community who've been saying things for quite some time. You know, as I said before, back years, and not just over the course of the last year. Kind of picking up on what Paul said, I would say that this is an opportunity. We do have, if we do find that there are violations, you know, we do have tools that we can use to affect change in a way that's different from, you know, a lot of other things that you've experienced or people that you've spoken with over the past year or couple of years or so. So, we ask that you just kind of trust the process. We ask that you speak to us one more time, you know, raise your voice one more time so that we can gain whatever knowledge that you have and insights and use it in this investigation, because this investigation might be different. I mean, that being said, we have not drawn any conclusions. We are objective and remain open to hearing all different perspectives. And once we find the facts, we'll follow the facts wherever they lead us. We'll analyze those facts and then make a determination of whether or not we found a pattern of practice.
Paul, can you speak to what can actually change as a result of this investigation?
Thank you. You know, at this stage, what we've done is initiated an investigation. It was announced on Monday. So right now, what's changed is that we're investigating, that we're going to have people from the Civil Rights Division working with folks in the U.S. Attorney's Office here to have events like this, to request documents and other materials from the police department and from the city to try to uncover the truth here. But we haven't, as Charles just said, we have not reached any conclusions. You know, we have to gather the facts and follow those facts in the law where they go. So right now, it's an investigation. That's what we're undertaking.
It seems like the question in the series really is, what happens if in doing this investigation, findings are made and systemic problems are identified? What then? What happens next, Paul? Are there a lot of remedies available?
Well, So if we get to that stage, if we reach the end of this investigation and make determinations that there are legal violations, that there is a pattern or practice of constitutional or federal law violations. I mentioned earlier, the statute that we enforce says that we then have the authority to file a lawsuit against the city and against the police department and try to get remedies that will eliminate that pattern or practice of violations. In the past, we've sometimes approached those remedies through a consent decree. And a consent decree is something that gets negotiated between the Department of Justice and a city and a police department. It'll have remedies that are meant to go after all the areas where we've found violations. And that gets filed in a federal court and becomes an order of that federal court. Now that's important because when you have a federal court order and somebody's violating it, you have the power of the federal judiciary standing behind it. And people can be held in contempt if they fail to comply with court orders. And that's a big deal. And so it's an effective tool for holding people accountable to making real change. We've had some real successes with using consent decrees to change things in police departments and to improve things. I can give a couple of examples. At the New Orleans Police Department, we have a consent decree there, and uses of force were a big deal, and that's one of the things that we investigated there. In the period 2012 and 2013, at NOPD, there were 18 critical firearm discharges. Fast forward to after the consent decree is implemented to 2017 and 2018, that 18 number went down to 3. In that same first period of 2012 to 2013, there were 229 deployments of canines and 13 times that those canines bit people. If you go then to 2017 and 2018, after the consent decree is being implemented, that 229 deployments goes down to 115 deployments. Those 13 bites go down to 0. Some other successes that we've had through this work at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office in Arizona, before our investigation, they had a practice of raiding local businesses and detaining everyone present and checking their immigration status. As a result of our investigation and some litigation after that, that practice was entirely eliminated. And there are other things that have happened as a result of our work that have been very concrete successes. And so we are hopeful about the, if this is a case where we find violations and we need to use some of these tools, we have some confidence that these tools can lead to real changes.
I'm seeing that people are concerned about whether our team from the Department of Justice really represents the city of Louisville's many communities. Would anyone like to address that?
Yeah, I think that is I can appreciate the concern that's raised. We probably don't represent the in the way that the folks are mentioning. We probably don't represent the city of Louisville, the various communities, but we try our best to hear from all the communities, and we honestly are really asking you tonight and in the months that come after this to tell us what we don't know. And if it seems like, as I think that a number of my colleagues have raised this, if it seems like we're not going in the right direction, or you have other information that to share to help us get to the truth, please just reach out and let us know that. And we appreciate you, appreciate the concerns, and we'll do our best to make sure that all voices are heard.
We're also Hillard Hines. They recently conducted an investigation of LMPD, an audit, and people want to know, maybe, and I'll throw this to you, how is this different? Can you use the materials that have already been collected to do our investigation here?
Yeah, so we're aware of the Hillard Hines investigation, and we've reviewed the report that was released earlier this year. Their review was more high level, and it was primarily focused on policies and training for select areas. Our investigation is more comprehensive, and it's going to dig deeper. We're going to include an analysis of potential constitutional violations, and it's going to involve, as Paul mentioned, a review of many individual incidents. It's going to involve the evaluation of LMPD's internal investigation system. And we're going to conduct in-depth statistical analyses of the various types of data at Louisville Metro and LMPD. But the biggest difference between our review and Hillard Hines's review is that in the event that we actually find violations, we have the ability to secure reforms to LMPD through litigation and through the power of enforceable agreements. So that's the difference between our investigations. With regard to using materials from Hillard Hines's investigations, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If there are things that have already been collected, we'll review it. But we want to make sure that our investigation is thorough and complete. So if we have to make additional requests, we will do so as needed.
Could someone explain the answer to why now? A lot of people want to know, why is the Department of Justice from DC, why is the U.S. Attorney's Office in Louisville opening this investigation in Louisville now?
Well, we, the issues that are raised by our investigation are obviously not new, not issues that are just new. People in Louisville, from what we've seen, have been talking about these concerns for a while. I can tell you that what our process is we review all publicly available information, and then we make a recommendation whether or not to open an investigation, and then that's and then it's open whenever we get the okay. I can say that once we were given the okay to open this investigation, we moved pretty swiftly to move forward on it. And so that's why we are here now, and while we're here, I mean, it's important to get your insights, now in order to complete the investigation.
Maybe, how far is this investigation going to look back?
Yeah, so this sort of has two parts, the answer to this question. In terms of looking at documents and tangible files, we look at incidents from over the last several years because that will reflect the current practices at LMPD. But we have to contextualize all of this information. We have to understand, as Paul mentioned, the root causes. And in order to do so, we have to take, at times, an historical look at LMPD and the city. So that's going to be our goal. As Charles mentioned, if you have experiences from more than 5-6 years ago, we want to hear them. We're going to consider all of this when making our determination.
Will this investigation hold any individuals or government leaders personally accountable for if there's a determination that there was a role those individuals played in the violations that could be found? Paul, if that makes sense, would you mind answering that one?
Yeah, I think I understand that question. I mentioned earlier that a criminal investigation is when you're looking at sort of one individual, what they did on at a particular time, and it's designed to hold that one individual accountable. Whereas what we're doing is to look at systems, to look at the bigger picture, to see not just how individual actors are